Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive into a classic tale, not just as a simple bedtime story, but as a genuinely fascinating case study in security, deception, and survival tactics. Today, we're looking at the story of the wolf and the seven little goats, but we're actually going to look right past the fairy tale elements and analyze the pure mechanics of the goat's plan for survival. I mean, think about it. How do you defend a home? How does an adversary breach that defense? And most importantly, how do you recover and mount a successful counteroffensive when literally everything goes wrong?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it? When a hungry, incredibly determined wolf targets a peaceful cottage of seven little goats, it kicks off this high-stakes battle of wits. This whole scenario perfectly illustrates the tension between static defenses and a dynamic, evolving threat. It shows us exactly why having a plan just isn't enough. You have to know how to adapt when your initial defenses fail against an adversary who is more than willing to change their tactics on the fly.
Okay, let's kick things off by looking at the baseline security established in Phase 1, security protocols. So before leaving for the market to gather bread and honey, Mother Goat institutes a very strict access control protocol. The kids are instructed to only open the locked door if they can verify two specific hard-to-forge markers. First, a soft voice sounding like a flute or a song, and second, feet that are as white as snow. Now, these markers were chosen specifically because they contrast so sharply with the natural traits of their primary threat, the wolf, who possesses this rough, deep voice and dark, dirty black paws. It's essentially a solid two-factor authentication system built for this specific environment. But, what happens when the initial brute force approach fails? Well, that brings us to Phase 2, the enemy's adaptations. The wolf doesn't just throw his hands up and give up. He actually analyzes exactly why he was denied entry. He systematically alters his identifying features to bypass the system. Step 1, he heads to the local shop and consumes a pot of honey from the zebra, specifically to smooth out a voice that sounds like rough rocks. When he returns, he passes the voice check, right? But he still fails the visual check because his paws are black. So he goes right to Step 2. He intimidates a rabbit into giving him the finest white rice flour, and he rolls his dark paws in it until they gleam like snow. He has systematically spoofed both of the security markers that the mother goat relied upon. And unfortunately, that brings us to the ultimate breach. Despite a final, intuitive gut warning from the youngest goat, who senses that something just doesn't feel right, the counterfeit credentials work. The visual of those bright white feet, paired with the artificially softened voice, entirely tricks the siblings into overriding their doubts. They open the wide door, and the perimeter is officially compromised.
Which brings us to a frankly disastrous Phase 3, the failed hiding plan.
Once that perimeter is breached and the wolf is inside the house, the little goats resort to a panicked, heavily fragmented survival plan. When the primary defense falls, what is the backup protocol? Well, unfortunately, in this case, it was pure chaos. Instead of a unified, coordinated defense, the goats scatter. They choose highly isolated hiding spots. One runs behind the curtain, another jumps into the big cooking pot, and another slips into the grandfather clock. And while the instinct to hide is totally natural, this fragmented approach proves completely ineffective against a focused, methodical threat. By isolating themselves, they allowed the wolf to just pick them off one by one without facing any collective resistance whatsoever. The tragic result of this fragmented approach is the number 6. The wolf easily captures 6 of the siblings, violently stuffing them into a big sack. Laughing wickedly, he retreats from the compromised cottage, lugging his heavy sack deep into his rocky cave in the dark woods. Only the youngest goat, the one whose gut had warned him from the start, manages to remain hidden and escape capture. The passive defense failed. Now it's time for active recovery in Phase 4, a new survival strategy. When Mother Goat returns to find the door wide open and only one surviving kid, she doesn't hesitate. She initiates a proactive rescue mission. Her operational timeline is swift and totally decisive. First, she tracks the enemy's muddy footprints straight into the forest. Second, and this is absolutely vital, she builds an alliance. She meets Baloo, a tall, gentle bear with kind brown eyes, and enlists his help. Third, together they track the footprints all the way back to the rocky cave. Finally, they conduct reconnaissance, observing the wolf humming to himself as he prepares a boiling pot for goat soup, while the terrified goats sob inside the sack. The tactical situation is definitely grim, but a critical vulnerability presents itself. With the water boiling, the enemy momentarily distracts himself, The wolf decides to take a relaxing bath at the nearby stream before his feast. This creates a tiny yet critical window of opportunity for the rescue team to execute a flawless counterattack. The question is, how do they maximize this brief advantage? This brilliantly illustrates their new cohesive strategy. They don't just run in and grab the kids, they actually set a trap. Step 1, they silently and quickly extract the 6 hostages. Step 2, in a total genius bait and switch, they plant a massive, unexpected threat, Baloo the bear, tightly inside the empty sack. I mean, deploying a full-grown bear into a canvas sack is a highly unconventional technical maneuver, but you absolutely cannot argue with its effectiveness. Step 3. The entire group hides securely behind the door and waits. They have quite literally turned the wolf's own sense of security right against him.
And the element of surprise works flawlessly. The wolf returns from the stream, shaking water from his fur, completely expecting an easy captive meal. But as he approaches the sack, he is confronted by a terrifying bear breaking out, declaring, "This is the end of your evil plan." That shock completely neutralizes the wolf's operational capacity.
In his absolute terror, the wolf stumbles backward. The lethal preparation he had set up for his victims, that pot of unbearably hot, boiling water, becomes his very own downfall. He falls straight in and runs out of the cave yelping and smoking, fleeing the forest forever. The threat is not just deterred, it is permanently neutralized through a combination of environmental awareness and the element of surprise.
So, what does this all mean for us? Let's look at Phase 5, the ultimate moral.
Survival isn't just about static rules. A locked door and a password protocol are really great starting points for sure, but they are not foolproof. True survival requires adaptability, the courage to face a terrifying threat head-on, and the cooperation to execute a dynamic plan. The true lesson here is that bravery and teamwork can outsmart even the cleverest enemy, and love makes the smallest heart the strongest. While their initial defenses were completely dismantled, their unified front, strategic alliances, and a courageous counterplan allowed them to overcome overwhelming odds and secure their freedom. As we wrap up this analysis, it's really worth turning the lens onto our own strategies. Ask yourself, what static security protocols in your own life, or maybe your business, might need an update? When faced with unexpected deceptive tactics in the real world, are you prepared to adapt, ally, and outsmart the threat? Keep that in mind the next time you think a locked door is all the defense you need. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep thinking tactically.